Hello, my name is Lindsay Holton and I am an EdTech demonstrator and teacher of English at Chorney High School for Girls. Today I am going to be exploring Rosenshine's principle number 9. Rosenshine's principle number 9 is to require and monitor independent practice. Students need extensive, successful, independent practice in order for skills and knowledge to become automatic. So independent practice. Independent practice provides students with the additional review and elaboration they need to become fluent. This need for fluency applies to facts, concepts and discriminations that must be used in subsequent learning. Fluency is also needed in operations such as dividing decimals, conjugating a regular verb in a foreign language, or completing and balancing a chemical equation. Independent practice is incredibly important when we're looking at the idea of fluency. Fluency in a skill and fluency in knowledge. In a typical teacher-led classroom, guided practice is followed by independent practice, by students working alone and practicing the new material or skill. Although at the moment the teacher-led classroom is looking a little bit different, especially as we are now remote learning, however, the principle still remains the same. The teacher is leading the content, therefore guided practice tends to be followed by independent practice. So the independent practice is necessary because a good deal of practice or overlearning is needed in order to become fluent and automatic in a skill. When material is overlearned, it can be recalled automatically and doesn't take up any space in working memory. When students become automatic in an area, they can then devote more of their attention to comprehension and application. The best way to become an expert is through practice, thousands of hours of practice. The more practice, the better performance. This concept here applies to every subject across primary and secondary. It is all about this idea of practice making permanent. I'd rather say practice makes permanent than practice makes perfect, because we know that perfection is almost impossible to reach. However, the idea of permanence most certainly can be achieved. When we look at independent practice, it should involve the same material as guided practice. So within the introduction of a task or the introduction of the topic, the independent practice should replicate that of the guided practice that the teacher has already shown. It would be inappropriate if the independent practice asked your students to do an activity that they have not been adequately prepared for. I'm sure all of you can appreciate we like to be prepared. We like to know what we need to do to be successful. Our students are exactly the same. We want to set them up to succeed. Therefore, the guided practice must be related to the independent practice that they are going to be asked to do. Students need to be fully prepared for their independent practice. Sometimes it may be appropriate for the teacher to practice some of the problems with the entire class before students begin independent practice. Teachers modelling methods and answers to the class enable students to grasp the construction of successful responses. Teacher modelling is incredibly important. As an English teacher, there are many skills and there are many tasks that we will model to the students, such as how to analyse a quote, how to analyse quotes. We do that on the board to show them how it needs to be done. As you can see on the image there, we've also got a maths teacher going through the method, how to work something out, so that the students can visually see what they need to be doing. This brings us on to the idea of cooperative learning. Research has found that students were more engaged when their teacher circulated around the room and monitored and supervised their seat work. I'm sure all of us can now reflect upon when we were in our own classrooms and we were able to circulate very easily and very quickly, sort of marking on the move and checking those students who are engaging and checking what they're doing. However, We can also look at this idea of peer-on-peer coaching, and it can be an advantage in the classroom. Having to explain the material to someone else, and or having someone else other than the teacher explain the material to a student, can be incredibly powerful. I'm sure all of you can now reflect upon a time where you're explaining something in the class and it's not quite getting through. A student can explain the same concept in a slightly different way, using slightly different vocabulary, and the students just get it. They use similar language. They communicate in a far more natural way with one another, which really has a positive impact on their learning. Cooperative learning offers an opportunity for students to get feedback from their peers about correct as well as incorrect responses, which promotes both engagement and learning. These cooperative or competitive settings are also valuable for helping slower students in a class by providing extra instruction for them. So this actually helps twofold. Not only does it support the student learning because they are retelling and they are revisiting the information, but they are also helping those learners that need that extra bit of explanation to get it right. Although Rosenshine's principle number 9 does focus on independent learning, the cooperative learning does provide the opportunity for that independence to develop. So by adopting that peer-on-peer coaching and that cooperative learning opportunity, it allows them to seek out that information. Looking at feedback, peer feedback is absolutely incredible, the way in which it can support pupils to move forward. This idea here is more focused on in the classroom. So I've looked at a few ways that this can be adapted for remote learning. We can replicate the monitoring in the classroom online. So live monitor the work that is being completed by jumping onto the Google Documents whilst your students are working. See what they are doing and you can respond accordingly. We can't physically go around every single classroom, every single book. However, you may have a select few, such as your targeted students, that you want to look at more regularly, and you can jump onto their tasks and have a look whilst they are working. The idea of peer-on-peer coaching, it can be replicated remotely. You could develop a buddy system whereby students are to work collaboratively on certain tasks using a live document on Google Docs, for example. There are other platforms out there, however Google Docs is one of those that you can work together at the same time, and also the teacher can see what they're doing as well. You could have them actively respond to one another to move the learning forward and to move it on. Cooperative learning offers an opportunity for students to get feedback. However, Google Documents will allow this to happen. So you can add comments, so students can be commenting on one another's work. They can email each other or even use the Google live stream, that all provide opportunities for students to interact with one another. We know that our students can be very innovative, so I'm sure if you discuss this with your classes, you'll be able to find a means that works very, very well for your class. And this brings us on to the monitoring with feedback. So as all of you, I'm sure you've been already providing feedback to your students. Feedback is crucially important for the students to hear from us and get some of that personal feedback as what is going to move their work forward personally. At the moment, I've been using a lot of Mote. Mote is an online application that can be downloaded onto your desktop, and it syncs directly with the Google Suite. So with Mote, you will see a purple sort of M in a little circle, and as soon as I click Mote, I'm able to give verbal feedback. Students absolutely love this because it's my voice, it's personal to them, and it's me. I think our students at the moment are really missing us as teachers, and this is one way that we can connect with them and providing that personal feedback whilst monitoring their independent work. it's very important that once we have set an independent task, that we are able to provide that feedback to tell them what went well, what could they improve to move that independent learning forward. The 17 principles of effective instruction, there is a list, and it overlaps and offers slightly more detail than the 10 original principles used to organise the Rosenshines principles. And as you can see right at the bottom, we've got to prepare students for independence practice and to monitor students when they begin independent practice. So these are two that are incredibly important to ensure that independent practice is successful and continues to develop and progress. Thank you very much for listening.